Hey guys, I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23. Welcome back to part 3 of 3 of this review series for the G&G combat machine RK47, the black version. Now in this third and final part, we're going to be taking apart this gun, checking out the internals, the gearbox, the motor, the hop-up, the barrel, all that good stuff, everything that goes into making this gun what it is internally. So let's get down on the table and check it out. Now obviously this gun has the same standardized internals as any TM or clone AK-47. So it's going to have a version 3 gearbox, short motor, 455mm barrel, so stuff like that. Let's get inside the gun and see what's in there. Now as I disassemble this gun, I ran into a handful of problems here. Let me zoom in on a few sections and we can check things out. Now as you can see here, the wires are soldered directly onto the motor. I'm not a fan of that at all. It's not a very stable platform and a lot of heat up, cool down, stuff like that. When you're running a gun, it just doesn't work well for the motor or the electrical system at all. So I highly recommend you guys replace those with pins. Now to actually remove this, I'm going to have to solder those off, so that's kind of a pain because the motor cage doesn't want to fit through the body itself. So that's a real pain. The mini Tamiya connector that connects the wire assembly to the switch and fuse assembly and up to the battery has heat shrink around it. That's nice, so if it's hard for it to come undone or whatever, but I have to remove it to actually, get the gearbox out of the gun, so it's kind of stupid. I don't know why they put that there. Now before we disassemble the gun any further, we can take a look at a few things, namely the motor, barrel, hop-up bucking, etc. The motor itself is just the same as any other G&G combat machine. It's got an alright pinion gear, more torque than the standard long type motor that came with the CM-M4. So that's nice, you're getting a little more torque there, probably a better rate of fire. So little plus there. Again, like I said, I am going to replace these with connectors. This is kind of a pain having things directly soldered to the motor. Now the hop-up chamber, even though it looks metal and feels metal, it is actually plastic. That's a very, very nice plastic. I mean, this thing, in my opinion, could match just about any metal AK hop-up chamber, so really guys, you don't need to upgrade this at all. The bucking in there is a standard green bucking. G&G makes pretty good buckings. I have used them as upgrade buckings for some Chinese guns, so they work pretty well. They're consistent and they're good quality and they're pretty inexpensive to replace. The barrel is not brass, actually it's that weird aluminum whatever it is barrel, so I'll be replacing that soon because the accuracy was so-so, so I'll probably just go get a Systema or a Mad Bull barrel of some kind. And now with the gearbox apart, we can go ahead and check out the internals individually, part by part. First we can look at the actual air compression system, the cylinder assembly. Now obviously this has a version 3 polycarb cylinder head. It's got the little extra lip here for the version 3. It's got the AK style nozzle, no internal O-ring, so it gets an alright air seal considering. And of course it's got a brass cylinder. Unlike the first generation combat machines, it does not come with one of those blue aluminum cylinders. This thing is brass. Comes with a pretty nice polycarb piston. The second and the last tooth is removed for a better engagement angle most of the time. It's got G&G's unusual ported piston head, and this one actually has bearings on it, so you get a bearing piston head. But I noticed this thing does not get a very good air seal, so that's probably why I'm getting a weird consistency in FPS here. This thing does have an M120-ish spring in it with a metal spring guide, no bearings, so I don't know, it's really not getting its full potential out of the M120 spring when I'm only getting 350 feet per second out of this thing. The tappet plate is not very flexible at all. It's okay stock. It's probably not going to break on you too soon, but you might want to replace it. The gearbox shell is actually a really nice piece on this thing. It's very smooth, very well machined. It's actually, I believe it's like a zinc or something. It's not exactly steel, but it's very similar. So it's a pretty nice gearbox shell itself. The gears are G&G's standard quality steel gears. These things are pretty nice, but I'm not a fan of the grease job they did. It's this yellowish stuff. It looks more like a Chinese grease than G&G quality grease. When I got my combat machine M4, it had this clear grease all over the gears and worked really well. It's pretty smooth. This stuff is very thick. It feels like it slows the rate of fire down quite a bit. So I'm going to have to degrease these gears and re-grease them with my own little thinner grease, so that's kind of a disappointment there. Obviously, you see this thing has 6mm copper bushings. I'll obviously be replacing those with something else. I'm not a fan of copper bushings. Copper is a little softer material than steel, obviously, so not the greatest thing there. As you can see, it does come with a pretty thick anti-reverse latch. It's very similar to the System Equality latches, so that's a plus. I don't think that's going to break on you anytime soon. Now, just on a final note here, the shim job is actually pretty good on this gun. I'm happy with that. It is shimmed a little loosely, but it's shimmed fairly correctly, considering. So that's nice. A few things I would upgrade on this thing. Obviously, the bushings. You know, they're metal, that's a plus, but I would really recommend steel. Not 6mm bearings, those are going to break on you with a 120 spring moderately fast, so go with solid metal steel bushings. You might want to replace the tappet plate. Highly recommend getting an air seal nozzle. It salutes in a little bit of air, but it's so-so. You can leave it stock if you want. I'd really recommend getting a new O-ring on the piston head. That thing's losing a lot of air, so that would be a definite to-do. You can get a bearing spring guide, but the stock metal one is okay. I've actually found that there's no hole in the back here, so it's kind of a pain sometimes if you like to use like a screwdriver or something to actually get it to fit in the gun more easily. I do that usually. I've got a spare bearing spring guide I'll probably throw in here, which will probably make it a little bit nicer and easier to reassemble. So, just a handful of things you can upgrade. You might want to throw in a new motor. The rate of fire is a little slow, but hey, that's your choice. I'm probably just going to put 20-30 bucks of parts in this thing and call it good. So, overall, good internals, excellent for what you're paying for it. 156 bucks, you can't really go wrong with this gun. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23, signing off.